I want to thank our sponsor, Newmark Watch Company, who are a British-owned brand who create stunning timepieces from the 6BB Pilot chronograph to the 200-metre water-resistant Water King. This year they're celebrating their 150th anniversary, which is an incredible milestone, as each watch they create is a celebration of their heritage, embodying the principles that have guided them for generations and earned them a loyal following, including myself. As well as their timepieces, they also produce 3 quality NATO straps in royal blue, military green and desert orange, which will all go very nicely with your Newmark watch. Their customer service is second to none, so you won't be disappointed when you purchase your own bit of history, so make sure to visit their website to check out all their products and also read a bit more of their history at newmarkwatchcompany.com. Thank you and enjoy. So Paul, can you tell us how your exchange with the US Navy came about?
Yeah, the Royal Navy was looking for exchange pilots because we were going to be F-35C customers, not F-35B customers, and we needed 2 streams of people therefore to go out and get cat and trap experience with the US Navy. We needed the young pups that were just going to learn their trade out there because there were no frontline aeroplanes to fly anymore with the demise of the Harrier, and there were people like me who needed to know how to supervise them. So there was a Royal Marine Lieutenant Colonel went first and I went second, and we then formed that stream of people. So I was actually in my garden having packed to go to the Libya campaign. I was going to deploy that day when I got a phone call from the appointer saying, do you fancy the exchange? So I went to Brize Norton, flew out and spent the Libyan campaign on HMS Albion, HMS Ocean, and then when we came off the gun line that summer, flew home to fly out to the US.
So was it a prize position for this exchange tour?
Yeah, absolutely. There was a competition, and I knew that your personal packs, your folders or whatever, were going in front of a board of some people, and knew the day that it was being competed for, and yeah, came up trumps.
So what did you have to do actually, and how many people actually jumped in for this position?
Oh, I've got no idea what, in the sense that it was a case of do you want to compete or not, and I think every single person in the Harrier community probably competed because it was a bit of a good deal, really.
Yeah, absolutely. So did you know much about the US Navy and the Hornet as well?
Not much about the Hornet. The Hornet was a established exchange for the Royal Navy, but this wasn't going to be an exchange per se. I think it was called something like the Long Lead Specialist Skills Program. So there were people learning how to work the deck, people learning how to control aircraft, all those other things that the opportunities weren't there in the UK. So these were a series of what they called one-way exchanges at the time, on top of the established exchanges that were with the Hornet community.
Mm-hmm. And did you ever get a chance to visit the US before you actually moved over in the official role?
No, not at all. No, well, I had been out to the US as part of just being in the military, but no, this was a case of get your family to London Heathrow, fly out to LAX, and then make your way north to Le Mans.
Yeah, I mean, that must have been amazing. What was it like arriving in America for the first time?
I remember saying to Fiona as we drove north out of LA, saying, well, if this is a wind-up, it's a very good one. It felt very alien.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk a bit about the Hornet. Can you talk us which model you flew and what the role of this aircraft was?
Yeah, I was lucky. I flew the F-18E. I did a bit of time on the F as well, just because on the RAG, or the RAG's changed its name actually to just VFA 122. I flew the F in the sense that you can solo up the rear seat and you won't actually notice that you're in a F model, not an E model. But I was very lucky when I went to the frontline squadron with VFA 25. We had just received brand new Lot 33 Super Hornets. So they're genuinely new car smell, buttons that had never been pushed before. They were fabulous.
So when you arrived, where did you live? Did you live on base, or did you have to find your own accommodation? Did you get any help there?
No spears intended, but if you are on an exchange tour or working in the US and you're in Washington, you get very well looked after. If you're anywhere else, you just get left to your own devices, essentially. Right. So we sorted out, I think we got something like 2 weeks paid for in a hotel, and then during that time we had to find our own rental accommodation, and we rented in a town called Hanford, which was just to the east of Le Mans, and that was just a case of sort out your own lodging and off you go, really.
So can you tell us some of your ground and flying training when you arrived there?
Oh golly, so I and the family moved into California, and I immediately got sent on my pre-employment training, which was to Pensacola in Florida. So that's where you do the almost drowning type stuff, the dunker, the parachute, all your survival skills, that sort of thing. And I was put through that with a French Navy guy, actually, a very young French Navy guy who was going to Meridian. And so I did that, and then I did the centrifuge back at Lemoore before. So did Pensacola, Lemoore, and then I went to do a short 4 months, I think, on the T-45 Charlie at Meridian to get my first deck qualification.
What was that like, flying the T-45?
It was a little bit odd in the sense that I should have been familiar with the aircraft, but it was that long ago that I really wasn't, because it looks on the face of it like a BAE Hawk T1, I guess, but it's a bit heavier. It's got a glass cockpit. It's got a head-up display, hook on the back, and some weird stuff like the air brake, because the hook is under on the belly. Then the air brake or speed brake, I think the US call it, have to be on the sides, just in front of the elevator, which means that when you pop the air brake out, it porpoises as it gets used to the airflow. And you know, it's the silly little things that catch you out. Like for me, the fact that you're wearing an unfamiliar helmet, unfamiliar harness, all this stuff that's just takes that top 1 or 2% off to take you off your game. And I seem to recall there was some really weird, and this does sound ridiculous, but I think that the push to transmit on the throttle was it allowed you to talk on the intercom, but also on the radios as well, and it just little things like that that were just a little bit strange, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, talking about the flight gear, how did you find the helmet coming from obviously the Navy gear and all the rest of the gear? Was it a complete change? A complete change and utterly rubbish. I don't mind saying it. The US helmets are rubbish compared to the British helmets, and the jump into the whatever you call it, harness, and then strap yourself into an aeroplane is a really inelegant way of doing things. It's probably a bias because I'm used to the British kit, or was used to the British kit, but I genuinely, I said all the way through my exchange, I go, you guys, for a superpower, this is an absolute Horlicks that you've created here. But but that was the only duff thing of that, and then finished off with the carrier qual somewhere off Florida. I think we were when we carrier qualled on the T-45. Yeah, can you talk us through that?
So you spend an awful lot of time, or did in the day. I think they've since I was in the program. Pilot assistance modes in the frontline aircraft have made this maybe a little bit easier, and therefore you can reduce the training burden, but you spend a lot of time pounding the field, so bouncing as they call it, field carrier landing practices, and then we flew to Cecil Field, and the next day you fly out as I think I was number 4 of a 4-ship, led by a experienced bloke, and you basically pound the deck until they tell you, stop, you've had enough. And I think from memory you do a couple of hook up passes, and that they give you a bit of coaching. Obviously my habit pattern was I was way too long in the groove. Like, you're only supposed to have 18 seconds behind the boat, and I was probably more like 30, rolling out too far behind the boat. So they'll say they're just 104 shorten. You're way too long in the groove, shorten yourself up, and then you're doing okay, I guess, when they say 104, get your hook down, this next one's for real. And it's a pulse raiser. It's really good fun, and it's a bit like an airborne crash, because everyone in the pattern, I was a lieutenant commander for Christ's sake, but everyone else is a lieutenant JG or whatever, and just having their first go, brilliant.
Do you do night traps in the T-45?
No, day only. I think it was 10 day traps.
Ah, right, okay. So you said you spent 4 months on that before you went to the Hornet, and can you tell us about this, like transferring over to the Hornet and training on that?
So it was a bit of a procedural thing in that you had to do 10 traps to qualify in the T-45. There's some sort of US Navy regulation that you have to have at least 50 hours in an aeroplane before you try and stick it to a boat. So that's what dictated the 4 months in Meridian. Looking back, I personally don't think it was particularly necessary. I think we could have probably just gone straight to the Super Hornet myself. Yeah, but there we go. Someone somewhere, probably in the Pentagon, decided we needed to refresh or qual before we did. And then it really was just a case of pack your bags, you're going to Le Mans. So you turn up at Le Mans and rock up to ground school, start learning about the systems. And the ground school and instruction at Le Mans was absolutely first class. There were amazing instructors in the simulator, and I think from memory you did something like 15 simulator trips before you got anywhere near an aeroplane. But so you were fully spammed up before you actually strapped an aeroplane to yourself.
And what were the similarities and differences coming from the Royal Navy? I think the training phase.
The differences, I'd say, the Royal Navy, Royal Air Force, the UK flying training system gets a little bit bunched about technical knowledge to the point that you often think, why do I need to know all this about all these systems? Then I'm not planning to either build or mend one of the aeroplanes. The US Navy probably less so. The US Navy are more standardized with regards to their flying. So your job isn't necessarily to think your way through a tactical problem. The Top Gun manual's already done it for you. So your job is to replicate the standardization that they're letting you know. So I think that was probably, I noted the major difference. But like I said, the instruction was absolutely fabulous, and particularly stuff like really good was tactical boldface. So whereas in the UK you learn your boldface drills for emergency, so engine fire, you need to know that off the top of your head. The US Navy would do that for certain tactical situations as well, which were really
that makes
clever.
more sense in a way.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah,
absolutely. So what was the sim like?
The sim, they had a lot of joined up simulators. So on the front line, you could go down there as a 4-ship and all fly together. Those it was really clever. And like I say, it's a huge building at Le Mans, and you do everything in it. You do your first sort of skills check in there at the end of your ground school syllabus. So are you able to fly? Are you able to handle these emergencies? All done in the simulator before you go anywhere near an airplane.
So they want to make sure you're not going to break that jet.
Yeah.
So, can you remember your first takeoff in the Hornet? It must have been nice having burner for the first time.
Yeah, indeed. And not an alien environment, because you are so used to it in the simulator. But yes, the burner kicking in is a good one. Although, and I've got a great friend who's currently at the War College with the US Navy. He's now a captain, but he was in the back seat for my first Super Hornet ride. Got to fly the jet that they painted in that Digiflage.
Yes.
That was my first ever go in a Super Hornet, and I'd learnt everything off pat the procedural way. And Mark from the back seat was telling me how to cut all the corners in the way. and in the end, just said, "Can you just leave me to it, just this once?" Really fabulous airplane to take flying.
Yeah. So let's talk about flying. What was it like, and what were its strengths and weaknesses?
What was its strengths and weaknesses? It was a very stable platform, which was quite annoying at time, and you ended up, I did anyway, having come from the Harrier, where your thumb is always trying to keep the aircraft in trim. Your thumb just never ever stops moving, or mine didn't anyway. The Super Hornet was best left alone, because it was so stable, particularly with the pilot relief modes of like autopilot, altitude hold, those sorts of things left in. You had to bully it. In BFM, for example, it was an incredibly manoeuvrable machine, able to really explore the higher angles of attack, but you did have to bully it in a way that I used to joke would probably snap the tail off a Harrier. The full control deflections that you needed to max perform the aircraft you had to be quite savage.
Right, yeah. So what was the cockpit like coming from the Harrier as well? Did it feel like a leap forward?
Yeah, I guess so, in the sense that everything that you needed was there. But actually, given that the Harrier 2 was a sort of McDonnell Douglas thing, and the Super Hornet was a Boeing thing, then there was a lot of let's call it common DNA there. Like you'd go, I don't know exactly where the fuel page is, but I bet it's in here, type thing, and it would be. So there was enough commonality. Again, there were silly things that would trip someone like me up that were different. So, for example, in the Harrier, the time early late on a strike was just a simple plus or minus seconds thing in the bottom left of the HUD. In the Super Hornet, it was a tape on the top left of a HUD with an arrow showing whether or not you were in front or behind time. Okay. And I just remember thinking, well, why did you change something so simple and so good? But no, the cockpit itself was fabulously straightforward. Really, really, really good.
So in the training phase, what would you be practicing? Would it be 50-50 air to air, air to ground, or did you focus on one thing more than the other?
Primarily, it was peculiar in a way because the spiritual home of the aircraft is self-escort strike, which is the ability to kick the door in air to air, deal with a SAM threat, but then drop weapons on target. The syllabus was almost the reverse of that, which was really get the air to air cracked. So within visual range or beyond visual range, a lot of fuel and noise, dealing with those skills, and then enough air to surface to make you good at things. But in common with a lot of training syllabi, then you did a lot of, let's call it dumb weaponry on the RAG syllabus at 122, and then you'd go to the front line and actually be more sort of JDAM orientated or whatever, which was actually a lot simpler. Mm-hmm. Fly to a bit of sky, pick or go home type thing.
Great stuff. So what was your frontline squadron after this phase?
I went to VFA 25, the Fist of the Fleet, which was superb, absolutely incredible squadron. The people were amazing, and like I said, the jets were brand new. So, although to be honest, I was more fussed about the people because you don't know how you're going to fit in, particularly when you're in a foreign country. And I think sometimes we forget that the US are a foreign country because they look and sound a bit like us type thing, but they really, really looked after me, and I think I arrived on the day of the Christmas party, so really? Obviously you walk into a new squadron and someone says, "Hey, you coming to the Christmas party tonight?" I go, "Yes," and then phone home to say, "What are we doing tonight?" Change the plans, we're going to the squadron Christmas party. Yeah. But yeah, they were absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, so like that first day on the squadron, what was it like? Did it feel like a first day at school sort of thing? You were a bit nervous, or did you just get stuck in with everyone? Did you feel like welcome straight away?
Well, you do feel welcome, but it takes a while to get to know people. So I think I had enough time on VFA 25 to do 3 night flying trips. So before Christmas, the skipper, who was a just genuinely amazing human being, took me up and kicked me around the airspace just to the west of Lemoore. And I think we then secured for Christmas leave. And I got back, had enough time to do 3 night vision goggle trips, and then we went to red flag, and I was still putting squadron numbers into my phone in the bus between Nellis and the hotel. So that's how quickly we just got on with things.
Wow. Yeah. So yeah, you mentioned red flag there. What was that like?
Well, it is amazing. I was lucky. I was in this really peculiar position, and it's probably the best thing that happened, I guess, in that I had done red flag before, and the Royal Air Force, and therefore the fixed-wing Royal Navy, essentially had adopted the US Air Force way of doing things. So as the new kid on the squadron, rather than just being sort of sheepish and not really earning my keep, I was able to say to these US Navy guys who'd only ever done the US Navy thing and only ever done Fallon, and go, right, I know exactly how these exercises work. Right. So silly example, but I went in for my first mission, like I said, brand new on the squadron, and someone saw me walking to the co-ord board immediately after the brainstorm, and I'm booking sanctuaries, the heights that you have, the hard heights that you have to stay at on the push, and one of them looked at me and goes, "What are you doing?" I said, "Give it an hour and a half. Everyone's going to want to be in that block of airspace for this push time. We're just getting a bit in early. I've done this N times with the Royal Air Force. I've done a red flag before. This is exactly what's going to happen." And it was really interesting because my squadron had done 2 cruises recently, so they were absolute ninjas around the boat. But these big, they had no awareness of how the US Air Force did their exercises.
Oh, really?
So for example, in the US Air Force and Royal Air Force system, you might have hard sanctuary heights that you're expected to be at, blocks of airspace, whereas the US Navy do it a lot more flexibly. They'll just say the friendly forces have 8s to 2s, so 8 to 12, 18 to 22, those sort of things, and Red Air has 3s to 7s. Right, go. And things like that were actually quite hard to get across to the US Navy squadron, who'd been through Fallon a number of times, who were just used to a different system.
So did the Navy not attend red flag that often?
They didn't appear to be honest, but our bunch hadn't, for example. So, and again, slightly strange, but when we did our recce of the Nellis areas, it was me showing people, you know, that
You were the tour guide.
Yeah, I was the tour guide. Yeah, see that weird hill with the little saddle in it? That's Area 51. Don't go south of there. That's Tonopah. You know, that's where the red air will be regenerating. Those sorts of things. So just lucky to be able to contribute, really.
Yeah. So what kind of flying would you be doing there in the Hornet, and how did it fare?
It fared very well. We were always fragged with offensive counter-air, and I did the first week on days and the second week on nights. I made a bit of a fool of myself, to be honest, because when I had done red flag, the most that you would ever see red air-wise when I was with the Sea Harrier was 2 4-ships up against you, and
right.
I think, and I'd said something like this on don't worry about this, fellas, you know, with our kit, we had this amazing aeroplane, we'll get to in just a second, but with our kit, we're not worried about 2 4-ships of F-16s or whatever. And then we went to the first brief, and when red air were cleared out to go and so that we could do the blue air mission brief, like 26 guys got up and like, oh, this has changed slightly. But we so with the Super Hornet in lot 33, we had the APG-79 in the nose, the AESA, and helmet, jammer, decoy, etc. And as you press hot, so you in the Nellis ranges, the blue air gather on the eastern side and flow to the west. So as you were pressing to the west with that radar, you could see all the groups. The fact that there are 12 groups out there and they're stacked in height, not a problem at all. You have your radar screen on the right, azimuth and elevation on the left. And actually, the trick was putting targets in those groups so that for example, the F-15Es that we were fighting with could see them as well on the data link. But our tactic for the entire 2 weeks was really, really simple, which was we would fly our US Navy prescribed tactic out the front and have a formation of Raptors just behind us, and whenever things got fruity or it felt like you were about to become overwhelmed, then you'd hear the voice of God on the net, and it would be a Raptor come to help you out. And I thought that was slightly counterintuitive, because you'd imagine, wouldn't you, that the Raptors would be out the front, but they preferred, actually, and it was a really good tactic, to let us do the detonation, do the first bit of killing, etc., and then pat out the fires as they flared up, which was really useful. And then actually you essentially push the red air all the way back to the point where they're going back to their airfield, simulating quick reaction alert, aircraft coming off the strips, and you'd bat them as soon as they were squawking alive again, which was probably quite soul destroying for them, but it was a really, really good fun tactic.
Yeah. Did you meet any of the Brits when you were out there at Red Flag?
The Brits?
Yeah. Did you know any mates or anything?
No. So I was the only coalition people on my Red Flag were Emiratis. And there was a lovely bloke called Rory, who was actually one of the Red Air guys out there, who was one of the he was doing an exchange with the adversary squadron. So that was that. And the Brits I did meet just by chance out there were the Reaper guys out of Creech.
Oh, right, yeah, the Reaper guys, yeah. So what was it like on the social side, being in Red Flag? Did you get to go to Vegas and do all that kind of thing?
A little bit, yes.
Yeah. We'll leave it there. Right, so let's get back to your squadron. So yeah, can you maybe talk us through a typical day on 25?
Generally, when we were at home, then you would go flying either in the segregated airspace out over the coastal highlands. There was one above Lemoore, and there was one to the east. So you'd turn up standard day, brief 2-3 hours prior or whatnot, and go and fly. The US Navy liked to brief. They and the sharp cookies, particularly the young guys, used to practice their briefs the night before.
Really?
Oh yeah,
wow.
They were ludicrously professional like that. But for whatever reason, they'd got into the habit of briefing all the standard operating procedures sort of verbatim, which was new to me. You know, if for example, when you're taking a air-to-air intercept, and there is a standard procedure for who you are going to target. The UK would just say that's SOP, standard operating procedures. The US Navy would actually verbalise it in every single brief, which did lead to slightly longer briefs than I was used to. But yeah, you'd go flying up in usually over the Sierra Nevada to the east, and with fabulous airspace, and depending on, it was a bit laissez-faire. You'd go airborne and practice maybe 2v2, 4v2, those sorts of things, and just as you were on your way into the airspace, shout out on a common frequency who's currently using what, and if no one answered, then you'd set up, right, we're going to set up in a particular valley. There were a number of valleys that we used to anchor over, and just get on with it. But just generally a standard flying day. I think, I can't remember which one, but one of the mornings was given over to Squadron PT, and I remember doing a defensive BFM set immediately after Squadron PT when you're dehydrated, and that was miserable, to be honest. But when the Squadron XO is busy hunting you, that was tough. But other than that, pretty standard, really.
Was it like a standard day, like a 9 to 5 type thing, or was it just when you're done, you're done?
I think we did a lot earlier than that. They like their early mornings. It was more like 7 or 8 in the morning till 3 or 4 in the afternoon. But then if you were staying to night flying, it was till the jets needed to go to bed, really. Yeah.
So let's talk about BFM or DACT. Did you go up against like the Eagles, F-16s and the Hornet, and how did it fare? F-16s,
yes. Eagles, once at Red Flag, got into a visual with one of those. Our trick was the high alpha stuff, and the F-16 would probably want to do more rate type thing. So I think that the jet could handle things far better than I could, to be honest. My G tolerance was always lousy. But yeah, so long as you could get into a high alpha fight, the jet would work for you. And like I said, the US Navy instruction about what you were looking for with respect to aircraft trekking in the cockpit, movement between the aeroplanes, being able to assess whether or not the other aircraft had sensor nose, as in was likely to be able to get a shot off at you. That was fabulous, as was, like I said, the tactical boldface, so what to do in this situation. So in a way it was a little bit prescriptive, but in a very, very good way. So it was really able to handle itself in the visual arena.
Was the comms different as well, coming from the Royal Navy? Or did you have to get used to that?
Some of it was, and I recall being told off when I was down at Key West in the fighter weapons stuff, because I was really, really simple in that the sort of thing that you don't imagine could ever trip someone up, like when you're trying to tell someone he's on my nose at 24 miles, so you say nose 24 miles, and you get down to the debrief, you go, I don't know what you meant. Really? But the US Navy, quite rightly, would go through the comm as the first part of the debrief, well, just after safety points, to make sure that everyone's comm was actually standard, and they were very hot on it, and rightly so.
And was the Super Hornet a reliable aircraft? Was it a maintenance hog, or?
No, bear in mind, I flew brand new jets. Then I can't remember losing a single sortie to aircraft unserviceability. Wow. It was a fabulous airplane.
Yeah, and what was it like on the Squadron as a Brit? Did you get much jip there? Much banter?
Yeah, particularly annoying because one of my better mates on the Squadron was a history major, so the usual fallback plan with the Brits on any exchanges to go reach back into history for particularly with the US guys. But the fact that Taylor, who I believe is now either commanding or shortly to command the Squadron, knew his stuff was a little bit banter limiting, which is a bit of a shame.
Yeah. So, can you share any memorable stories from your time flying the Super Hornet?
Oh, golly. My favourite, well, the two that would probably always make me smile, maybe three, would be Red Flag. The first time we pushed, I was on the first mission, and I think I was number 4, and we had a Top Gun guy out the front. So the naming names had Fluffer was leading, then Love Wrench, then Taylor and myself, and we basically walked into this, like I said, 26 aircraft wall, and we'd just got the clearance for the jet. I think we could fly in a 10-02 fit, so 10 AMRAAMs, 2 heaters and gun, and I'd said beforehand, you know, again, I'd already made this fool of myself by saying there'll only be a maximum of 8 out there, and we just were wailing away. We were just shooting, so usually you get this. The GCI guy is quite. The cadence is normal when he's trying to give you the picture. The picture was so confused that this guy was gabbling, quite rightly, because he's trying to describe this enormous air picture in front of us. Everyone's shooting, and then at this one point in the mission, Fluffer just says, "Oh my God, like there's just so many aircraft out there." And it only occurred to me when this happened, but Mark, number 2, very new to the squadron, junior pilot, lovely bloke, hadn't said a thing all day. And when me, Fluffer and Taylor were just about Winchester, we'd somehow managed to throw 30 AMRAAMs down range or whatever. And when all of a sudden there's this sheepish, I can see 2, and we're like, well, shoot them for God's sake. So that was day 1 on red flag. But yeah, Fluffer coming out with, oh my God, was probably incredibly apt. I remember once launching off the boat when the US Navy do this thing called an airborne respot, where the jets are all in a higgledy-piggledy mess on the deck, so it's easier just to launch everyone, do a 45-minute cycle, let's say, and then all recover, so you can all be put back in the right place for the next morning. And one of my friends challenged me a race to height, and he won at, I think it was 51,000 feet or something ridiculous like that. Wow. That he'd got to. That was incredible. And then the last one that I'll share was I saw an in-flight engagement with a growler. I was getting fuel by the island once, so I'm like pointing across the landing area so that the jets are landing in front of me, left to right, and I heard the screaming power call, which I'd heard about screaming power calls, but I didn't realise they were actually screams. But when someone shouts power, 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 look to my left, and there's this growler sort of settling below the round down. And the guys did, I guess, the right thing, having got into that situation of putting in full blower, but their hook grabbed a wire on the way past. So right in front of me, genuinely right in front of me, they ended up with this growler in full blower, trying to tug USS Bush into the sky with it, which was only ever going to go one way, and it essentially crashed right in front of me, which was awesome. But to your point about the reliability, the jet didn't even register a heavy landing. It was absolutely incredible. That's one of my favourite sights, I think, in my entire career.
I can imagine, yeah. It's me off for like a video game or something.
Yeah.